to blow your mind. Look at Ephesians 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Right, so that's the King James. Now look what it says in the Geneva Bible. This one is from 1560. This is before the King James. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the worldly governors, the princes of darkness of this world. And notice how it didn't use against again, which means the worldly governors are the princes of darkness of this world.
Elohim is also translated as judges, legislators, governors, the bright ones from above, and so on. All these terms that are used actually indicate the functions that this Elohim performed, but do not say who they really were. The Elohim were certainly judges, they were certainly legislators, they were certainly governors, but who they really were and what the term Elohim really means, we don't know.
God is not supposed to be singular in the Bible. It's plural in all cases, gods with an S.
So Billy continues on his quest to prove to anyone who actually understands the biblical languages that he doesn't understand them. The ending im normally indicates a masculine plural in Hebrew. So Elohim, at face value, looks like a plural version of the word El, meaning God, and the im plural ending. And so therefore you could mistake it for then being the plural gods. Now in some cases, Elohim does refer to plural gods. The problem with this is that the word Elohim is what's known as a concretized abstract plural. And this is a function within the Hebrew language where a plural word is used in a singular sense. And a concretized abstract plural operates in a similar way to, say, the English word sheep. So we can have one sheep or 50 sheep. It's the verbs around the word in both cases.
The term Elohim was not translated, remained Elohim.
I see.
Because in the word, nobody knows the really meaning of the term Elohim. So it's better not translated.
But to leave it as it is.
Exactly.
Which is, so that's a transliteration that we're looking at.
Elohim yes, in my contract, they wrote that I must make a literary translation. So terms as Shaddai, Elohim were not translated.
They were left as they were. Interesting. So it's true to say then that you're an official Bible translator for the Vatican?
Yes. For the publishing house San Paolo for the Vatican. Yes.
If I take the Masoretic translation of the Torah,
yes,
it's identical in content. They contain the same books.
Not in all the translations.
Right.
There are many different differences, and often are also important. And so when we are in front of this book, we have only be careful to the context, because the translation of a unique term is always uncertain.
Yes.
Is uncertain also if all the scholars of the world say that this is the translation. Is not certain.
Right, they're using their authority.
So in front, okay,
yeah.
They use their authority because often they are dogmatic,
yes.
Of course,
yeah.
And so we have to use the context to understand the real meaning of single terms.
Yes.
Like the verb bara, who is present in the first verse of the Bible, in the Genesis, Bereshit bara Elohim Hashamayim ve'et haaretz. So the term Shaddai, that doesn't mean Almighty, but it means Lord of the mountains, Lord of the steppe. But in the Bible, you find always the translation Almighty. But they know is not Almighty. Because, for example, in the Bible of Jerusalem, in the notes, they write that the translation Almighty is a mistake.
Right.
But since in the Bible must be God, God must be Almighty, so they insert Almighty. Also, they know that Shaddai doesn't mean Almighty.
So we have Israel, we have the peoples of Israel.
Yes.
We're told that they're brought out of Egypt by Moses.
Yes.
Does Moses receive a divine instruction or any instruction to take the people out of Egypt? And if so, who gives that instruction?
Yes, but in fact, Moses told to that Elohim, who are you?
Yes.
Because he wanted to be sure with which he was speaking.
Okay.
Because he don't knew.
I suppose I have had experiences that I would describe as spiritual, but I'm not a Christian, but I have an idea of what Christians think God is. And what Christians think God is a man, often with a beard, who is the father of Jesus Christ somehow, and is alone. He's one God. One God. And if I understand you correctly, you're saying there's no basis for that in the Bible.
In the Bible, there is no basis.
And that's the Old
Absolutely.
Testament of the Bible. Yeah.
Old Testament, absolutely, there is no basis for this construction of the image of the God like a person.
When do you think that image began to be constructed?
In the Bible,
Yeah.
in the Bible, at the time of the exile.
At the time of the
in Babylonia.
In Babylonia, right.
In Babylonia.
Right.
Because before they weren't conscious of the existence of many Elohims.
Yes.
Clearly in the Bible.
Yeah. What I wonder is if this Elohim idea is correct, and that we have an organizational force which is organizing different cultures around the world, what was going on between the ancient Egyptians and the early Hebrews at that time? I mean, Moses leads the children of Israel out of Egypt, we're told in the Bible, but Egypt seemed to carry on in its own way afterwards for at least another 1,000 years. Did they have an Elohim or looking after them?
The Egyptians.
What about Mesopotamia?
And the Elohim, they don't call them Elohim, of course, because it was another language.
Yeah.
But I think they were the same. In Hebrew was Elohim. In Mesopotamia was Ilu or Ilanu. In Egypt was other name.
Yeah. But the same function.
Yeah, but the same function.
Yes.
The same characteristics.
So to cut a long story short, do you interpret these entities as human beings, or
yes.
You interpret them as human beings? So this is where there's a crossover with my work and your work, in the sense that I have advocated the possibility of a lost civilization of some sort, which originated during the Ice Age, and which was destroyed in the global cataclysms that brought the Ice Age to an end. Now, it has for a long time seemed to me that the wisdom and knowledge of that civilization was not lost completely,
yes.
but it was preserved. That there may have been specific groups of people who were charged with carrying that knowledge down
Yes.
into the world. So I can see the crossover with
It's absolutely possible that Elohim were those.
human beings with special knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of higher technology.
Ever heard the God of the Bible described as Jehovah? How about Yahweh? Wonder where that comes from? Well, it all starts back at Exodus chapter 3, when Moses at the burning bush is given God's name with the 4 Hebrew letters Yav-He-Wah-He. And this is how ancient Hebrew renders it, with those same 4 letters. While there's some dispute about how to pronounce the word, one likely potential is Yahweh.
But when did the Hebrew language come into existence?
In that moment, Aramaic was the international language
Yeah.
as the English now.
Yeah. So,
but we don't know. We don't know in what language the so-called Yahweh speak. But for example, we must know that the vowels of Yahweh were put 2,000 years after their first pronunciation. So nobody knows the real sound of this.
If we accept the early date for Moses, 1200 BC,
yes,
you're saying that the language that Moses spoke could not have been Hebrew.
No, the language
could have been
Moses,
ancient Egyptian.
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Yeah, could have been ancient Egyptian.
Egyptian.
Is it controversial to say that the Hebrew language did not exist in 1200 BC?
In that time started to exist a form of language which is defined a previous Hebrew.
Old Hebrew.
Old Hebrew.
So there was
but it's not Hebrew because the Hebrew really started to exist as a dialect the 10th century before Christ.
But since Moses was reared in the household of the Pharaoh, it's most likely to be in the ancient Egyptian language.